All right. Let's not waste any time here today, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen of all ages, and just anybody interested in the NBA content. Thank you once again for joining me here on The Charge. I see Sean is already in here, ready and rearing to go to kind of understand and kind of have a very interesting topic to talk about today. And I'm just going to preface this topic that we're going to be talking about. Thank you, Sean. I do appreciate that it's your favorite show and not ESPN. You know, ESPN has kind of gotten a little bit bad. But the reason why I kind of want to preface this is we know that as of right now, the NBA is really short on money. The owners and many of the minority owners, many of the majority owners for the most part in the NBA are perfectly, they lost a couple, they lost a significant amount of money during the pandemic. I know that a lot of us plebeians down here are not going to shed a tear over that, but it does affect in terms of kind of the future going on for the NBA of kind of a situation where they're going to be looking for different solutions as to how they're going to get that money and how to recuperate it. We know that one of the ways that many teams are looking at is by adding two more teams to the NBA, by having an initiation fee of, I believe, $2.5 billion, which could offset what's been lost so far. I know that the Boston Celtics just recently announced that they will be allowing fans back in March. So this is definitely a huge step in the direction that they want to start having fans again into the NBA arenas. They want to start adding those guys and women and anybody that loves the NBA to join again, because we know that they're struggling with money. But for a little bit, I know that there is a couple of ways that fans could actually help an NBA team even more by this next story that we're going to read today. So we all know, if you guys have been living under a rock or if you guys are not on Reddit or anything like that, you know that the GameStop stock has been kind of the biggest news in the media for the past couple weeks now. A bunch of Wall Street investors, or not really Wall Street investors, more so just meme stock guys, retail investors, the everyday Joe that uses Robinhood or Fidelity or E-Trade or whatever. Yes, Supreme Gamer, I know that they are a joke, and I will be talking about them a little bit later. But let me go back to the kind of the story that I was talking about here. But just as I was talking about, this isn't a stock channel. This is not a financial advising channel, but we do know that the NBA is looking to add money. Now, one way that an owner is trying to get in there, and I know that the Warriors were trying to do this as well, and we're going to kind of move on to the live stream in just a second. But what if I told you that the NBA could be looking into allowing companies to own a small percentage in the NBA team, which would then allow fans to actually buy stock in that team? So if you guys don't know, let me go to the story that we're going to be talking about today, which is, of course, a new breed of firms buy stakes in NBA teams. And Sean, you probably know the stock market more than I do, and maybe you can kind of get me a little bit more into this story, but let's read a little bit and then we'll kind of talk afterwards. So last month, the owners of the Golden State Warriors quietly approached the NBA for an approval to sell a minority stake in the team, not to another business mogul, but to a publicly traded blank check company that has been partnered with a private equity firm. The Post has learned. This, of course, comes from the New York Post. The unnamed institutional buyers, who, according to sources, have support of Silicon Valley tycoon Chamath Palihapitiya. I just butchered that. Yeah, Sean, they approached a SPAC, and we'll kind of get into it in just a second. We're confident the NBA would okay to buy the stake, sources say. But the NBA Advisory Finance Committee put off the decision, and the Warriors withdrew the request, figuring it was dead, according to three people with the knowledge of the matter. So again, we don't know if that... yes, and Chamath is the king of SPACs. I do know that. But the failed bid comes as, like I said, professional teams from the NBA to the MLB are squeezed by the pandemic, which has emptied out arenas and stadiums for a year now. Massive team losses have spurred crushing capital calls on investors, many of them now looking for an exit, but are finding there's dearthy of wealthy individuals willing to be able to take their place. Enter Wall Street. The pandemic has opened the door to a flood of financial entities with names like Red Ball Acquisition Corp, Acro Sports Partners, hungry for a piece of the action. If they succeed, it could change the face of professional sports forever, but thus far they're having trouble completing a single deal. Sources say that Glenn Taylor, a billionaire owner for the Minnesota Timberwolves, went into the NBA a few months ago to pitch the idea to sell Arcros, a private equity firm formed in 2019, to buy a small stake in the teams. But the idea was shot down because Arcos have not been approved by the NBA, sources say. Arcos recently filed to raise money via a blank check company that could be used to buy stakes in basketball or baseball teams that needed capital to cover the losses. And Sean, you are right. And this, and Sean kind of is already picking up on what we're going to be talking about here. So the reason why I opened up my sort of opening arguments as to what the NBA fans could do here is the fact that the NBA, a lot of the owners have been crushed by the pandemic. And, you know, you could say whatever you want about how much money they have and you know, saying like, boo-hoo, who cares? They have so much money. Why does it matter? But again, at the end of the day, owning an NBA team is a business. And what most business owners are most proud of, or what do they love to do the most, is make a ton of money. And what better way to make a money than by starting these blank check companies that would allow these teams, that would allow these teams to sell actual stake into NBA teams. For the most part, I know that there is some rules, and what I've read is that the NBA does not release their financial records to anybody. Like, we know how much revenue they made, we know how much revenue they lost, but we don't know the full books of the NBA. From what I can tell, that there's only one NBA team so far that you can publicly, you know, buy stock in, and that's of course Madison Square Garden, owned by James Dolan. But of course, you are just a small minority stake owner. You're not like the majority owner, so James Dolan has the final say into what the Knicks do. And this is kind of sparked and kind of seen as a very interesting way of acquiring not only assets and capital, but a way in which NBA teams could finally be owned by NBA fans, and maybe even, as Sean said, Colin Kaepernick, Baron Davis, Shaq, all have started raising money for SPACs because they know that these private blank check companies could be the way in to actually owning a company. And that's the thing. I mean, Sean, you kind of nail it on the head. I mean, this could lead to many opportunities. And, you know, when you're a fan of an NBA team, when you're, and you know what, we can look at this, Sean, and, you know, this could be an interesting topic just in terms of, let's say, you know, I know, Sean, you're a huge Grizzlies fan. This could lead the topic or the idea of now teams are going to be able to, and of course the NBA hasn't approved it. And I think they're a little bit hesitant to approve it just in the fact that they don't want this to kind of be around the league. But let me continue reading and then we'll kind of continue here. So Arcos recently filed to raise money via blank check company that would use to buy stakes in those teams. Of course, no one has, the NBA has not approved this controversial topic. Because obviously the NBA wants to be, I think the NBA, from an NBA perspective, from anything, is that the NBA wants to be owned and have a face to the name of that team. Whether, like I said, that's Steve Ballmer, whether that's Fenway Sports Group. I mean, most of these stadiums and teams are owned by banks like TD, etc. I can't see it happening. Hey, Tyrese, long time no see, man. It's been a minute. And that's the thing. You know, the success of the NBA teams will be based on, you know, the amount of money people are willing to put in. I mean, let's think about this. You know, we're all passionate sports fans. I mean, Tyrese, you and I, both Boston Celtics fan. Could you imagine a situation where if we actually invested, I don't know, let's say, you know, for example, you put in, like, let's say, for example, the Boston Celtics worth like $50 a share. I mean, if you were able to get a lot of people invested into it, could you imagine, like, and this is the thing too, I know that like I said, Madison Square Sports or Madison Square Garden, I know is that it's a publicly traded company, and that's the only one so far in the NBA that you're allowed to kind of, that goes to the NBA team, the New York Knicks, the Islanders, like all these other teams. Like, but could you imagine a situation where you're able to own, a share in the company? Returns it would force on expansion, opening leagues into other countries. And that would be a very interesting thing, Sean. I know that, I'm not, kind of making it simple for the people that don't really know much about SPACs and all this other things, but, and obviously I'm still new to it, so I'm not trying to act like an expert. And you are right, Sean. This could open up definitely new opportunities to many different countries. But again, it kind of comes to this, and let me continue reading before we kind of have a huge discussion on it. So Gold Acquisitions, formed by the NBA legend Michael Jordan's former agent, David Falk, has raised $225 million after listing on the NASDAQ stock market. Sports franchises are facing a huge strain in cash flow, leaving ownership groups without the appetite nor the liquidity to continue franchise funding for undetermined period of time, it told investors in its prospects. Sport Tech Acquisition, formed by Houston Astros general manager Jeff Lovenow, last week raised $150 million, and there's so many people that are raising money. Sources say various SPAC owners have contacted nearly every NBA owner in the past year, and many of them NBA owners, particularly small minority owners, they want the option to sell the entities to these people added. Indeed, frustration appears to be building among some corners. What did I say here? Corners of the NBA ownership rank solely how slowly the NBA head by Commissioner Adam Silver is working on the solution, sources say. The pressure on Adams is extreme. And this article continues going on, but I will end with this. 3/4 of the MLB owners would need to approve even a minority stake sale into SPAC, but what would be okay remains the open question. With one source saying many baseball owners have told that they would vote it down on site. It is why some Wall Street think basketball, not baseball, would be the frontline complex financial instruments. Baseball guys are dinosaurs, said one financial financer. The NBA is forward-thinking league. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen there. And Tyrese, that's the reason why I'm not going to say like I disagree. I'm just going to say it out. Like I disagree with your premise because we know baseball is very old school in their way that they play, in the way that they think, in the way that they move. I think the most progressive league you could say in terms of actually kind of interested, really the NBA was the first one. Whatever you think of China in terms of the CCP and all that other stuff, that is obviously up to you guys. But the NBA was the first one to actually go to China and start expanding, and that's how the NBA is probably one of the most popular, besides soccer, maybe as one of the most popular sports in the country of China. And so you could definitely see this. And you see here, Sean kind of has, kind of talking about the MLS, could embrace it for sure. We can start pulling up top talent, raise salary caps, etc. And that's kind of my thinking of it is like, think about the ability for you to own an NBA team, at least have some stake in it. I think we're getting to a point now where I think a lot of fans, a lot of people are so heavily invested without actually having anything to do with that team. Like, yes, you can bet on fantasy sports, you can bet on all these other things, but imagine you were able to invest and actually, have some sort of say or be in a group discussion, maybe hear an earnings call about your NBA team and what you guys are doing. Like, for example, let's say, you and me, Tyrese, we own a piece of the Boston Celtics. Let's say whatever SPAC company it was, they're merging with Boston, and we can just kind of talk and say like, we could talk about the current situation that's going on in the NBA currently, right? We can say, hey, we see here that Brad Stevens is kind of not pulling his weight up for what's going on for the Boston Celtics right now. Like what's the issue? And we can actually really talk to him and ask the tough hitting questions compared to, us being in the background, not being able to have a voice, where I feel like this could allow the fans to not only have a voice, but also have a say and also be able to raise capital. I mean, this to me, and Sean, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, But this could prove that the small markets could potentially win out in terms of, let's say, for example, you're battling the LAs, you're battling, these big cities. But imagine you as like a smaller city, like let's say, for example, Sean's team, the Memphis Grizzlies. They're a pretty small market right now. But imagine if Sean was able to invest so much money in there, along with other investors that were so into the Memphis Grizzlies, that they were able to raise so much money that they were able to actually compete and actually, acquire the assets and acquire so many players. Like, I think that this would be a very interesting situation for small markets. I mean, I understand that the only issue that I would say would be, just kind of the situation of the NBA players themselves now becoming basically a huge part of the company. Like, the Memphis Grizzlies can survive for so long, but if they don't have a star, people could sell their stock in the Memphis Grizzlies and eventually go to, let's say, the LA Lakers. I mean, that's kind of, there's so many things, man. Like, I think it's very interesting because I think there is some pros and cons to this sort of structure. And as I'm thinking about it now, because this wasn't a topic that I was thinking about as kind of the main one, but as I got to thinking about it and started thinking a little bit more, I think it's going to be a crazy situation if a lot of NBA teams were going to be able to go public. And Sean, true, we have to look at these things. Like, if LeBron gets hurt, does that mean the team's finances tank? And that's exactly right. Like, what if the finances were based on whether or not the team won an NBA championship? Like, that is kind of also my concern a little bit with being able to, be part of the NBA teams. Like, I understand, like, it's a great way to raise capital, to raise money. But at the same time, what worries me about getting the Wall Street investors, to get just investors in general, besides kind of the owners, is just, people kind of pulling their money away. Like, let's say it's during the middle of a season, you're playing your best games, and then your star player gets an ACL tear. I mean, does that panic the sellers or does that panic the investors to be like, oh no, we got to sell. We got to sell on the Memphis Grizzlies, and we got to go to the LA Lakers because they have LeBron James, they have Anthony Davis. We got to put all our money into the Lakers. Like, what does that do as an NBA team? Like, or as an NBA team, as, trying to create this fair, balanced, and sort of like a situational thing where, you have a lot of stuff on the line if that's the case, right? And I think there is some pros to it, right? The ability to raise capital for your team, the ability to raise so much assets, so many different things to get your team to the next level. So teams would merge with different companies, like how Boston is merged with GE, and Timberwolves are with Target. And that's definitely true. I'm not saying that, like, our money is going to be like it could be the difference. Maybe it could be the difference. And that's just kind of an interesting kind of debate and kind of interesting topic to think about is, does that mean at some point, as we kind of look at situations, my only concern, it really matter of what has become too high of a stakes. You need a balance between public equity and private, and that's true. I do agree with you there, Sean. It's like, it's a matter of, too high of stakes. Does, it just, because the thing is, and I think the article talks about it. I think a different article that I read, it talks about the situation where, the value and the worth of a team could very well be in the balance. If we kind of had an open market in this situation, could be in the balance of the investors of whatever team that is. So, if more teams are invested in the New York Knicks one year, because I think they are the most valued franchise, just due to the fact that James Dolan has so much liquidity, he has so much money, not just due to the fact that he's able to raise it via whatever, the Madison Square Garden company. Yeah, and like, what happens when people start to short franchises? I mean, like, that's kind of also another thing too. I mean, there's got to be I think if teams were to be on the stock market, with much more validity, like, what happens when, private equity firms, like we just saw with Melvin Capital and GameStop. I know that maybe not a lot of people know about this here in this chat. I don't know if you guys are well versed in this GameStop stock market sort of situation. It could happen too. Like, what if people start short selling a franchise? Basically, what you're betting on is that the team will lose a lot of money. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we're gonna get to a situation now where, like I said, one day the New York Knicks could be the most valued franchise in the world. Everyone's like, buy, 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 and then all of a sudden you could see a huge pump and dump scheme with that, or you can see a lot of people just being like, well, I'm not really a huge fan of the Knicks right now. They're not making the greatest moves. I'm moving my stock towards Laker stock or Knicks or, Boston Celtics stock. Like, you could see a whole situation. I mean, there's so much to talk about in this sense. And that's the reason why I wanted to keep it kind of top secret with you, Sean, because it is a very interesting topic to talk about. I know that not a lot. I know this isn't like the flashiest news of like Kyle Lowry could be going to a different team. That's also rumored, of course. It could talk about how LeBron James isn't excited about the All-Star game. Like, I know that those things are very, important topics as we talk about the news and rumors, but think about it from a financial side in terms of being able to kind of have, as this further develops, I'll hop on the stream to talk about it. Yeah, I mean, I would love your take on it, Sean. Especially as this kind of develops and we see if the NBA does approve some of these SPACs to actually own these at least a small minority stake in these NBA teams. It's only a matter of time before we are able to even just purchase some stock in that SPAC. And we can speculate, obviously they're just blank check companies. They're just places that accrue money. And then eventually that money goes to some sort of, it's almost kind of like, for my people out there, it's like basically saying that a company is going public on the stock market. It's kind of the same thing with the SPAC. Like, basically it's just a company that's able to go on the stock market, but accrue money, and you don't know what that company is going to be able to merge with. But like I said, if the NBA allows it, like I said, there's only one team that's currently publicly traded, but they won't tell the financials of the team. And you know what? It's kind of an interesting scenario to talk about. I mean, there's so many like avenues that we can go in. We could talk about, does it make sense for NBA teams to do it? Does it make sense for, people to be invested in these companies? I mean, like I said, it does provide an opportunity for you being such a huge fan of that team. Instead of buying merchandise of that team to show your true colors, to show your pride for that team, next it could be just money. I mean, you could see, like I said, me and you, Tyrese, we're Boston Celtics fans. We could just be like, you know what? I want to buy like 100 shares of Boston Celtics stock. Or for Sean, I want to buy 500 million shares in Memphis Grizzlies stock. I mean, this is just going to be a situation that is going to allow, and really, this could make or break a franchise, and this could really make or break the NBA in general. I mean, does this mean that, do companies, and like Sean said at the beginning, like, does this mean that you could see expansion into other countries? And I'm not sure if I would necessarily agree with that take in terms of, I could definitely see maybe you add a team in Mexico. I could see maybe you adding another team in Canada. Maybe you go Vancouver. But it does add a lot of interesting situations as it pertains to kind of what's going on in the NBA in terms of being able to own some sort of stake in the franchises. I mean, this could lead to a lot of very interesting and very, to be honest with you, kind of scary scenarios. I mean, true. I mean, that, and Sean, you do bring an interesting point about that. The NBA Europe, NBA, what's up, James? How you doing? I mean, James, once you get that money, James, once you go to college, make that money or whatever you decide to do, you could have some minority stake in the Nuggets. I mean, that's the craziest part about it. You know, like we talked about, as sports fans, we're so passionate about what team we love. Maybe we're passionate about the sports player themselves. Eventually, you know, whatever team that player's on, you'll buy stock in that team. Like, you know, let's say Giannis, for example, you have so much stock in Buck stock that you just decide that, like, you know, as soon as Giannis moves to like Miami or these other franchises, you could be like, well, I'm really a big fan of Giannis, so I'm going to try and invest my money into into the team that he decides to go to. I mean, you know, the money will follow the star players, and that's going to be a very interesting scenario. And John, you are right. Like, this could open up many, many interesting scenarios where you could open up many other NBA franchises besides in America. You can start one in Europe, you know, because we know that the Chinese stock market's also a very big thing with Alibaba, which is basically the Amazon of China. Or you could talk about, I believe, I can't remember which is the one in Africa. The person I just talked about it. I don't remember it, but I will look it up later. Definitely buying some Nug stock once that's available. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, this is definitely going to be a very, very interesting topic. It's a very, I would say, it's very different because, like I said, you're investing in the team's success. You're investing in how the team does financially. Like this also could be a scary sight for NBA teams as well, because now you have to open up your financial books to the public. And maybe there's some things that you just don't want, you know, like the Trump tax returns. There's some things that you don't want NBA fans to see because they could be finessing the system to a point where teams are able to, like I said, finesse the system, be able to kind of get some tax breaks. I mean, I think that's the reason why the NBA is very reluctant on it. SPACs are changing the game. When I was running for city council, I joked about IPOing a city, but now SPACs are actually in talks with cities themselves to IPO. I mean, I think it makes sense. I mean, it is a very interesting thing. I mean, you invest in a city. Let's say, for example, you know, me and you, Sean, we live in the city of, well, let me not say what city we live in. Let's say, you know, we live in Seattle. You know, we invest in the Seattle SPACs. We invest in the Seattle infrastructure that allows that money to then go to other areas that are in need in Seattle. For example, you know, we got, you know, the homeless problem. Like, we can invest money in there. I mean, it's a very interesting scenario where I think this finally allows a person, and I don't want to get too political or too, like, you know, I'm not I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say here, but we can actually start, you know, instead of our tax money, you know, investing into a huge pool and then the government splits it up. You know, these SPACs, if we invest into that could really invest. Like, for example, let's say I want to invest into a SPAC where in Seattle, they focus on basketball development areas where, you know, it can build like a boys and girls club and allow that whole thing to happen. Like, I would so 100% be on board for that type of scenario. And like I said, this might be too much, like, and like I said, this is like a huge topic that you can spider web it to like many different things. But Sean, I would actually love that idea of me being able to invest my money into what I think the city needs. Like, maybe I think they need more boys and girls club to play basketball at, or you know, invest in an arena, or invest in a not an arena, but invest in different things like a YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, or like a private rental gym. Maybe not private, because obviously, you know, it's owned by the people that pay for it with the money that they spend in the SPAC. But or, you know, invest in the company, and you know, the success is based on revenue growth. It's based on, you know, new ideas, how you expand them. I mean, this is definitely opening up the idea to kind of the system that I think a lot of people that are not, you know, left or right, but more so in the center, that, you know, kind of don't want government being involved in their life. Like, this could be maybe not an escape, but this could be a different alleyway for them to say, all right, you know, I'm all for investing in my community. Maybe I invest in that. And, you know, this is probably getting way too far off, and maybe I'm not even right in the way that I'm assessing it or even thinking about it. But But again, this could be a very interesting situation to where we can now have the ability to invest into whatever we want with our money. Like I said, the way that the NBA is going, we'll see. I'd be so interested to see the financials of NBA teams. Are they fixing the nacho prices? I mean, that's true. I mean, maybe, you have so much stock into a company, you're able, like, let's say, for example, Sean, me and you, we both own a stock in an NBA team. Maybe we're able to be on the call and figure out, what is the owner? What are the people, the CEO of that company? What are the people doing to get the team, one, to the championship that I think a lot of people would be asking for? And two, what kind of financial stuff are you doing to make sure that we get money? Is it, increasing the nacho prices? Is it, increasing merchandise? Is it expanding beyond just, the arena? Like how, selling merchandise to other stores, or, opportunities of signatures of NBA players. I mean, this is like a very, I would say, eye-opening sort of situation. And let me get some water really quick before I just have such let me get some water. I'll be right back. But let me put on some highlights of kind of a couple games. Let me see if there is any games. Let's just go with who played tonight. Trying to see here who played tonight. Maybe we'll put this on as kind of like for NBA and just kind of just watching it. I'll put it on silent, but let me grab some water really quick and I'll be right back. Whoops. Of course it did that. Not this. Wow, look at that perfect timing. Just got back as well. But yeah, I mean, just kind of going back. Again, this is a very, very interesting scenario. And again, guys, this to me is one of those things that who makes these in questionable order? I don't know who makes it. I think the NBA is just kind of, they do whatever they need to do. But man, like, and just kind of going back to the Spock debate, and it's kind of the topic. I know I lost probably a couple viewers from being gone for like a couple minutes. But again, guys, like, this could open up a web of different opportunities for teams to figure out a way to make money after they lost so much in the pandemic. And like I said, a lot of us that are kind of in that plebeian stage, or don't own money, or, don't have a lot of money compared to these millionaires and billionaires that kind of run the world at the moment. Not to kind of get gloom and doom about it, but they need help from the plebeians, because again, together, together you're stronger. I mean, that's kind of like the saying, and that's kind of like the situation that I'm noticing, is that these these people that are interested in this stuff, that are interested in the way that everything happens, like, you know, it's one of those situations that, you know, you couple your hands together, you know, and that's how you get the most water. Like if you're in a stream and you need to drink water, you cup it here compared to, you know, opening your hand up like this, because you're not going to get the most water. But if everybody collectively, this is everybody, it's just kind of like rising tide lifts all boats. And that's kind of the thing that, and you're right, Sean, that's probably more of a better saying than what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the situation that I'm noticing with the way that the NBA is trying to go down. I mean, the question then becomes as well, like, does this take the fun and joy of the NBA? And that's another thing to talk about too. I mean, now does it become too much of a business? I think a lot of us already complain that the NBA is too much like a business. Like, does this now mean that it's going to be, you know, kind of overboard on that? I mean, that's kind of the thing that you also have to talk about. Water ain't an issue. I'm not sure why they're wet, James, but I'll just leave it at that. But at the end of the day, guys, like I said, this is going to be a very, very interesting situation to kind of continue to monitor and look at. And like I said, you know, Sean, whenever this stuff happens, if it ever does, you know, because I think the NBA is always going to be, I think sports owners are going to be very reluctant in this. I mean, I know there's some NBA owners that are very interested in this, but there's also a lot of NBA old school owners that are going to be like, no, it's got to be one guy, you know, or a couple guys along with a majority owner, and just be like, you know, we just want to own the team. And so, like I said, this is going to be a very interesting scenario, a very interesting situation to kind of monitor and look at as we continue to see what the NBA decides to do to recover from this pandemic. Because although they're now going to be allowing fans back into the arenas, you're going to see a lot more people in there. You're not going to see a lot of empty arenas anymore. I'll be very interested to see. I could see Cuban doing it. I'm not sure. I feel like Cuban's very hit or miss on that stuff sometimes. Like sometimes I think that he'd be okay with it, and then there's other times where he's like not okay with it. And so, you know, I think maybe I'm wrong in that assessment, Sean. Maybe you could, you know, maybe you could prove me wrong with that. But I'm not sure about Mark Cuban in my opinion. I think he's kind of a fence sitter in my opinion until, you know, push comes to shove. I know that he's innovative in some ways, but I do feel like he kind of sits in the middle of things and doesn't really lean one way or the other. I think he kind of waits until like the majority of everybody does it, and then he full on goes. Because I mean, we saw what happens when he stopped playing the national anthem. Definitely a Shark Tank legend for sure. And you know, like I said, you know, we could go in like so many different web directions and so many different avenues of this story. But like I said, the NBA has yet to approve it. There's only one team so far that has been, I would say only one team that's been very interested. Or sorry, one team that has only been publicly traded. You know, it's so late right now. I'm being ridiculous. But, you know, only one team so far in the NBA is a publicly traded company, and that's the New York Knickerbockers. And it's the reason why they are one of the wealthiest teams is because of the valuation of their stock, but also, you know, many different variants as well. But it also doesn't hurt to see that, you know, the New York Knicks have the ability to raise capital if they need to, based on, you know, the stock market and that sort of scenario. So again, we'll see what happens. I know that Fenway Sports Groups are also something that a lot of SPACs are also been courting those. Red Ball Acquisition Corp raised over $500 million. Has been in talks to acquire a stake in Fenway Sports Group. Obviously, they're big in their you know, they're trying to get that. And you are right, Sean. Like for the NFL, you can buy a stock in the Packers, but it's not on the market. You just get a piece of paper with no value. And I think it's really, I mean, just like these NBA owners, just like anything, like it's just that sort of bragging rights that you own a piece of the team. Like, I'm not sure how much a stock for the Packer is, And obviously you don't get your money back. You just literally, it's almost kind of like a donation. You're literally just giving the Packers money as like a donation, and they're able to do whatever they want with it. I think I might be wrong on the Packers thing, Sean. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong in my assessment of what I think what it is. But it's like you said, it's basically a piece of paper with no value. And yeah, and I mean that's the kind of crazy part to me. I mean, just even think about that, Sean, and everybody in the chat. Like, people are willing to just spend $200 to just say that they own a piece of the Packers. Like, that's got to be kind of some, that's got to be crazy, right? I mean, the fact that you're able just to buy $200, you don't get your money back, you don't get a return on investment from the Packers, but you're able just to get $200. It's kind of crazy to see that, with that being the case and that being the scenario, that why would anybody be wanting to give $200 to the Packers each and every year? Because people are passionate about these sports teams. And I think the Packers are kind of a clear example of that. But at the same time, do you want every NBA team? Do you want every NFL team? Do you want every MLB team to be owned by the fans? And that's going to be, I think, with the way that Twitter is right now and the way that kind of social media is, I think that could be also another toxic environment as well, to kind of add more fuel to the fire. It could be a situation where, for example, let's say, Sean, Grizzlies not doing so hot. They lost to the Clippers tonight. This could be a way where you could just, instead of the media, the players are answering phone calls from investors, right? The fans being like, yo, what's up? Like, what's going on? Dylan Brooks, why are you shooting too much? Or, Kyle Anderson, can he move faster than 2 miles an hour? Like that's going to be an interesting scenario to see. If SPAC is the way it's going, if stock market is the way the NBA teams are going to get that money back, is that going to be a scenario where now you have to answer to the fans? But for clarification, we blew them out. Did you guys blow them out? Maybe I was looking at the wrong game. Yeah, I definitely was looking at the wrong game, but but I think the point still stands, right? Or we'll reverse it for you, Sean. Clippers didn't play too well tonight. Our Kawhi Leonard and Pfizer P. Are you gonna is the that would be a very, oh man, I would feel so bad for Paul George if that was the case. If you were able to just get on a phone call with him as an investor and just kind of lay into him, and that's the thing, people are willing, even enemies of a team are willing to kind of put the money in if they're able to kind of heckle the players in this one. I hope that's not the case. I hope that really is just you're answering to the CEO, you're answering to all this stuff. But like you said, the value of the franchise is tied by the player for the team. So for example, like you talked about, LeBron James, it's true. I pay $8 a year to do webinars with Shaq Talk Dom's players. Yeah. I mean, you and Solomon, you could talk to Solomon and be like, yo, what's going on, Solomon? I mean, that's kind of the thing. And, as we kind of look, and really, I think this is going to be the topic that we kind of end this stream on, because it's such a very fascinating topic. It's a very a lucrative investment for players, for fans. I mean, even just think about that. This could also, and I didn't really think about it, this could be a situation, Sean, where now, you get your salary paid. Do you invest in that team? If you're LeBron James and you invest in the LA Lakers, you now own an NBA franchise. You could own majority of the shares in the Lakers now. Or, you own the minority shares of the Lakers, and now you're the minority owner. And that's kind of the thing. That is very, very interesting. And, it does, this could lead to another players empowerment movement where now you just buy shares in your team, and you can, for many of these players, they want, they already run the league. Could you see them, if they get a minority share, be like, this is the coach I want. These are the GM I want. These are the players that I want. That, to me, is going to be a very interesting scenario and very interesting situation to kind of read. Do you pay players now, giving them a 401k where they're able to get stock options on an NBA team? Like, stay with the Memphis Grizzlies for 10 years and we'll give you shares in the Grizzlies. I mean, that to me is going to be a very interesting scenario. On the left, Brandon Tyus Jones over Leonard. Not sure about that, but you know what? Got to give it to the Grizzlies Got to give it to the Grizzlies tonight. They did their job. Obviously, they won. They won the second quarter. I mean, they basically won every quarter besides the first. So it's definitely going to be a great recipe for a dub. But again, we talk about this all the time, Sean, in our stock group chat, and just kind of in general. This to me is going to really be a very interesting scenario to kind of like to look at, to figure out, to understand as we continue to move on in today's day and age where, the idea of being part of the franchise is not just, buying the season tickets anymore. It's not just, owning the merchandise of your favorite sports team. It's now, it could be potentially a future where you actually own stake in the team, where you actually have, 100 shares in the Memphis Grizzlies or the LA Lakers or whatever team that you're a fan of. You and me, Tyrese, we're going to be Boston fans, and, we're going to have so many shares in Boston. Maybe it'll finally wake them up and actually win another championship. But, that's just me being facetious. But anyway, guys, I think that's going to do it tonight. Because, like I said, this is going to open up a huge Pandora's box if this was allowed. Which I'm not sure if the NBA is ready to understand. And to be honest with you, I don't know if that's even going to be a situation where, are fans ready is the NBA even ready for that Pandora's box to be open at this point? Like, yes, you will get the cash now. You'll get the cash, but at the same time, is it going to be a scenario where, you have so much stake into a team, it's going to open up different it's going to open up different scenarios where, NBA players might own a stake in a team. Does that mean, like, for example, if you get traded from Memphis to the Clippers, do you get the same amount of shares? It's just it's going to be one of those scenarios where I would be very curious to see how this would either hurt or help the NBA in the future. Because like I said, in the short term, it seems like a great idea. Fans put in money, they get return on investment, the NBA earns more money, they're allowed to, like I said, raise the salary cap, be able to buy players, do all these different types of things. But again, like you said, Sean, and like I'm talking about here, this does open up Pandora's box to many other different scenarios, not just short-term gains. Does this also mean in the future, do a lot of things change for NBA players to now own shares in the team? For, the videographer or the coaches, do they get a share of the team? That is going to be something to look out for, and we'll see what happens. And Sean and James, you're right. Boston ain't winning because they're struggling right now without Marcus Smart, the way that Brad Stevens is coaching. It's definitely a struggle bust situation. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it here for the Charge. Thank you once again for joining me here. I do appreciate Sean, James, Tyrese, Supreme Gamer. I know that you guys probably left a little early, but I do appreciate y'all for coming in and kind of checking in on me. And again, this is definitely a different topic, but it's also a sports topic that has to deal with stocks. And I know that for many of my viewers, it's a different scenario, it's a different topic, but at the same time, it's very informative because you could potentially be part ownership of an NBA team by buying shares of that team. So again, investing is a really good idea, but you got to make sure that it's something that you're very smart, that you're calculated in, and you do your research. I got some missing assignments. Yeah, why don't you go work on those missing assignments, James? Come on now. Stop watching my show and get those assignments done. But anyway, guys, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thank you once again for joining me here on The Charge, giving the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. Be sure to tune in tomorrow, as I'll probably go live a little bit earlier, probably go about 3:15 to about 4:15, 4:30, and kind of talk more about the NBA news and rumors and kind of the Kyle Lowry situation. Although his agent did say that he's not on the free agent market, or he's not in the trade, he's not in the trade rumors. I think that's smoke and mirrors. So I do think that Kyle Lowry could be available as a trade piece in the near future. But anyway, guys, that is for tomorrow's show. Thank you once again for joining me here on The Charge. Like I said, giving you the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. Please remember to hit that like, that share button. The more likes, the more shares equals more people viewing the channel. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace.